my crafty friends, this is Angie with Tink's Treasures, and today I want to make a card that I was inspired by Jennifer McQuire on Gina K Designs YouTube channel, and she had this magic slider card, and I was inspired to make the card, but instead of the embossing technique that she used and her stencils, I thought, what if we did the gilding and the hot foil and then maybe just colored in the images. And so here is my thought process, and I do have a little card here to demonstrate. We're going to make a full version of it, but what my thought was, instead, so I don't have stamps to match these images, which would make the whole process a lot easier if it was a die and stamp set, but I don't. So this is my, I don't want to say workaround, but this is the way I came up with it for this project, is that I did pick out some of Anna's die cutting dies, or die and emboss cutting dies. Now, they're not exactly meant to work in the Gild machine because they're not 3D. However, it will kind of give us the overall look of it. And then this is a random Sizzix die that I had in my stash that I think kind of fills out the space. So here's how it foiled on acetate. And the lines are fairly thin, but this next go around, I want to add a shim to it and see if I can't get a little more pressure out of it and see if I can't get a little more of the gold foiling. But in order to work with this is kind of how the whole process got started in my little brain, is that in the magic slider card, okay, so I'll show you this. Now, bear in mind that I am not an artist, I'm not even a colorist, and this was like my first attempt. So I'm hoping the second attempt I might be able to get a little bit better at. But I did use the dies, and then I also embossed them. So they're not cut into the page, but they're just embossed, and that's what I was using to color. So you pull up the little slider, and ta-da, there's your image. And I have a feeling that some of you who can color better than me, or I need some practice, might make that look a little prettier. But in order to make the magic slider card, I was like, oh, well, that's just the same thing as the slider card die set that Anna has. So this would make like the whole process so much simpler. Now, her die set is to make this card that you slide up and it reveals an image, and then it kind of stands up like an easel card. We're not going to do that, but we are going to use this die set. So let me show you. Here's the dies I'm going to be using. So I'm just using the two main pieces to create the card and the slider. And then these are the papers I want to try and use. Now, the first attempt, I just was making this with white cardstock to give me a feel how this was going to come together. But I do feel that since this is printed only on one side, that this will make the process easier. I'm going to have some border of pretty flower. The back will be pretty if I choose to leave it at that way, because I was thinking maybe of just mounting it on a card. But then the inside that you'll see will still be this white, and that's kind of what we need to be able to emboss and then color with. And then I just picked out another die as a sentiment. So I've got some gold foil paper here that I'll cut with. And then my next little tip is, so I've been saving my cellophane little bags that we get our supplies in. Like this one has some sentiments. And so you can actually hot foil on this with your Gild machine. So I did work with that this morning. If you wanted to, you can also use this, since it's already a little envelope, you can make this as a shaker card. I don't have anything to put in it as a shaker other than maybe some like embossing type So I'm going to just not make this a shaker card, but you totally can. I mean, it's already got the flap and everything. So just an idea. So what I want to do, I'm going to cut my paper down. And I don't know the name of this paper, but it came out of the garden party set that I have from Anna. I'm sure it has a name, I just don't know what it is. So I need my long plates for this. Okay, and so this would be part of the original slider card that she has, but we don't need this piece, so I'm just going to cut that off. Okay, so this is going to be the base of our card. I'm just going to set that aside. I will get this heating. So I'm going to be using the bottom of the plate. I find that works better, and I am just using 4 minutes, which I need to let it heat up first. So I'll have to restart the timer, but I'll let it heat up. When it's green, then I'll hit go. But part of this is that at this point, this is where you're gonna like line up your images and just see how everything is gonna fit in your space. And if it just hangs off the edge a little, I think that's okay. Just whatever you think works for you. But I'm okay with that. So you want a piece of foil. And this foil I get off Amazon, and it has worked really well for me. So I'll put a link for that in the description box if you want to try it. And you'll just kind of want to line it up and make sure that your images are in there. And then I was also looking, since this was a nice coincidence that it worked, is that you can just buy these acetate bags on Amazon. So I'll put a link for what I found in there too, if you don't have any. Okay, it's green, so I'm gonna start my timer and let it cook. Okay, so I'm going to run this through the Empress, and I'm only going to run it through once. Okay, so one thing to point out. So yes, I can tell when I use the shim that the lines are a little bit heavier. and you can see like right here that foiled and the detail of the flower foiled, but because there was a shim in there, it also cut. And that's why I only run it through one time, because when this is like my third attempt, I think. The first one I did, I ran it through twice with no shim, and it cut just a little. And then the second time I did it with no shim, but I only put it through once, it did not cut. So then you could still use that as shaker card. So this time when I cut, and I did use the shim, it cut. So it'll still work for the purpose of making this card, but you won't be able to use it as a shaker card. So just note that. So we have that part done. You can just set it aside. And then from here, we are going to emboss. Okay, so you're going to need your 2 A plates and an embossing mat. And the sandwich I did was the embossing mat, the card, and you're going to want to let that hang over so that nothing happens to catch or emboss on the rest of the card. And then, well, I take that back. Before we do this, we need to add our acetate to it. So let me put some adhesive on this. This just happens to be thin double-sided adhesive. I think Score Tape is a brand. This is off Amazon. Here's where you could fill it and then fold it over and close your envelope, but I'm just going to trim it off since we're not going to be using it as that. Okay, so here's where we're going to line up our dies just so that we can emboss it. And then I'm going to add a shim and my A plate. And I've got this hanging over so that it doesn't get any texture or boo-boos on it from running it through the machine in the plates. Okay, and theoretically, once we close this, everything's going to line up just like that. Okay, so far so good. The next step, you want to cut yourself a piece for your reveal. And I'm just curious, No, that's too busy. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece of white to go in there to match this. So at this point, you're going to want to use some type of, I wonder if maybe ivory would look better because that's not a true white. And I guess if you wanted it to be exact, you could probably use the back side of whatever paper you're using, but I hate to waste that. And this isn't a true ivory, it's not Anna's. It is just some paper I got off Amazon, which actually is not an ivory. They had a better ivory, and I took a chance on this one, and I was wrong. But it's still decent paper, and I would just call it an off-white. So that looks better. But at this point, what we need to do is add either some foam tape or some foam squares and give us some dimension for this to slide. So I'm just going to leave this here approximately where it should go. I'm going to put a few pieces around it. I'm going to give it a little room so it's not so tight sliding in and out. Oh, except don't do what I just did, because we still need to color the images. Okay, so I picked out a couple different colors, different than what I did the first time around. I feel like those were too dark. Again, I'm not a colorist. I am just kind of learning to use these. So I'm going to color this in, and I'll just fast forward through it so I don't bore you. Okay, I'm just going to experiment. Again, like I said, I haven't done a lot of coloring, but I'm just going to go ahead with a light pink to begin with, and then go over the raised portions with a darker pink, and then I'll color in my stems with this green. And I have another green here that I might go back and get a couple of the details on the leaves, maybe. I don't want to over promise and under deliver here, so here goes. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of just work with that. Again, I need to work on my coloring skills, but for the purpose of this card, it doesn't look too bad. And then the last thing I want to add is this little sentiment. You got this. This is out of my stash. It was one of Anna's dies. I couldn't even tell you which set it is anymore. I'm going to add a little wet glue just to make sure it sticks everywhere. And then I was thinking what I would like to do. You could probably just use this if you wanted to, but I'm gonna layer it on another card. And this is out of last month's mystery box, so April, the 2026 April mystery box. I'm gonna put a piece of gold underneath it just to kind of offset it a little. And I'm just gonna cheat a little. I don't have an exact measurement here. I'm gonna cut out the center just because it's not being used. So I'm going to save that. Okay, so let's take a look. So this is our gold foil gilded with on a piece of cellophane. And that doesn't look so bad. Clearly I need to work on my coloring skills, but if you're a good colorist, that would work perfect. This is just one of her dies, and then I layered it on some gold foil and another piece of a card, and then the inside is blank right now, but you could easily stamp or place a sentiment in there. And depending on how you want to use your card, if you want to embellish it more at this point, you could, but I'm going to leave this as is just so that the foiling is the center of the show here. So I hope you like this and can get some ideas from this. Just play with the paper, because some of it, when I used a shim, it made it cut and sometimes it didn't cut. So just kind of play with it first before you go through your whole process. But like I said, when I did the foiling on this one, the very first time I did it, I ran it through twice, just because that's kind of how I've always done the foiling with the Gild, and it did cut. The second time I ran it through, I only ran it through once, and it did not cut the cellophane. But when I tried it on the third try, this one right here, and I did use a shim, your lines are bolder, so they're nicer to see, but it did cut a little bit. So there's just a little bit of play with that in there, but I think this came out beautiful. Okay, so there we have it. I'm just gonna call this good. If you wanted to, you could embellish a little bit more, but I'm going to leave this as is and just let the foiling be the star of the show. So I will leave a link in the description box below of the video I watched that was from Jennifer McQuire on Gina K Designs YouTube channel for her magic sliding card. And if you want to go ahead and give this a like and a subscribe, I would appreciate it. I am building up my followers. I am up to 1,500, and I've given myself a goal of 2,000 by the end of the summer. So, as I like to say, it is free for you to do, but priceless to me. So until next time, happy crafting. Bye.